Because I look like Jake Wilson's true love, who died in a car accident. He paid me $10 million for 2 years to pretend to be her. So I put away my leather jacket and motorcycle helmet, wore white dresses, and learned to smile gently like her. I didn't expect to play the role too well. Using her gentle tone, I won over his grandmother, who gave me the family heirloom. Using recipes from her social media, I cured his father's years of eating disorder. I even won over his rebellious younger brother. Until the real true love came back from the dead. I thought I'd be kicked out and could go back to clubbing and boxing. But Mrs. Wilson pulled me behind her protectively. He said to the real one suspiciously, "Sarah is our only daughter-in-law. Why are you impersonating her?" Jake's true love, Emily, came back from the dead one afternoon. That day, I was helping Mrs. Wilson trim roses in the garden. She held my hand and put a pair of jade bracelets on my wrist. "Sarah, dear, these are passed down to the eldest daughter-in-law. I'm giving them to you today." Before I could refuse, the butler rushed over in panic. "Mrs. Wilson, sir. There's a young lady at the door. She says her name is Emily." I felt Mrs. Wilson's hands suddenly tighten around mine. Behind me, Mr. Wilson, who had just praised me for making better soup than a top chef, dropped his teacup with a crash. In the living room, Jake was sitting. When he heard that name, his whole body froze. I followed everyone's gaze to the door. A woman in a white dress walked in slowly. Her face was pale, her body thin. But she still had that elegant, ethereal quality, that face. We looked 70% alike. It was Emily, the woman who had been dead in Jake's heart for 3 years. She was back. Emily's eyes swept across the room and finally landed on Jake. Her eyes instantly turned red, her voice full of grievance. "Jake, I'm back. 3 years ago, everyone thought Emily died in a chain car accident. Afterward, Jake searched like a madman. In the end, he only found a body, burned beyond recognition, but with all her belongings. He held a grand funeral for her. Was depressed for a long time, like he'd become a different person. Until a year later, he found me through a private detective. Someone who beat people black and blue at a boxing gym, but had a face 70% similar to Emily's. He gave me a contract. $10 million for 2 years. I only have one requirement," he said. "Then become Emily." Her smile, her tone, her kindness. Everything about her. Anytime. Anywhere. "You must be her." I raised an eyebrow, and right there by the gym's punching bag, imitated Emily's smile from her photos. "Okay." I threw away my motorcycle helmet and leather jacket. Went through all of Emily's social media posts. Watched all her favorite art films. Memorized all her public statements. Using her gentle tone, I won over Mrs. Wilson, who had been wary of me. She became so fond of me that she handed over the household management. Using recipes from her social media, I cured Mr. Wilson's eating disorder and insomnia, caused by missing his late wife. Using her psychology expertise, I made Jake's good-for-nothing younger brother, Marcus, respect me. He called me sister-in-law more affectionately than anyone. In 2 years, I became the perfect young Mrs. Wilson in everyone's eyes, the indispensable backbone of the family. Even Jake called me Sarah more often than Emily. He gave me gifts all the time, making me feel like we were a normal married couple. Except during intimate moments, when he'd occasionally call me Emily. Whenever that happened, I reminded myself I was a fake. But I didn't mind. His face was indeed handsome. And now the real one was back. Jake almost stumbled to Emily. He reached out his hand, wanting to touch her, but not daring to. Emily. Is it really you? Emily's tears fell like rain. Jake, I didn't die. I just was in a coma for 3 years. I woke up a few days ago. A touching reunion scene. I stood quietly to the side like an outsider. I thought next would be the scene where the substitute, took the compensation and got kicked out. But I didn't expect the first person to speak would be Mrs. Wilson. She didn't hug this regained granddaughter-in-law, but pulled me behind her, looking at Emily warily. Sarah is our only daughter-in-law. Why are you impersonating her? Emily's tears were still wet on her face. She looked at Mrs. Wilson in disbelief. Grandma, what are you saying? I'm Emily? Mrs. Wilson snorted coldly, gripping my hand tighter. Emily died 3 years ago. Jake held the funeral himself. What's your game, woman? Getting plastic surgery to look like her? And coming to our house to scam money? Mr. Wilson chimed in. Indeed. Scammers are getting more sophisticated these days. Butler, call the police. Emily cried harder. Jake. You believe me, don't you? We have so many beautiful memories. The places we went together. The cat we raised together. The vows we made together. Jake supported Emily. Grandma. She really is Emily. She's back. What surprised me most was Marcus. That playboy now stood in front of me. I only have one sister-in-law. And that's Sarah. Don't you dare bully her. She looked pitiful in Jake's arms, tears falling like broken beads. Jake, how can they treat me like this? And her. Her finger trembled as she pointed at me. Who is she? Why is she here? Finally, my turn. I stepped out from behind Mrs. Wilson and extended my hand for an introduction. Miss Emily. Hello. My name is Sarah. I'm Jake's wife. Emily's body swayed again, as if she might collapse at any moment. Jake looked at me with complicated and apologetic eyes. I knew he was pleading with me. Pleading with me to consider the bigger picture. Pleading with me not to make the scene more awkward. But not for much longer. I slowly withdrew my hand and carefully removed the jade bracelets from my wrist. Grandma, these are too precious. I can't keep them. It's time to return them to their rightful owner. Then I looked at Jake. Mr. Wilson. Our contract can end early these 2 years. I believe you're satisfied. Now that Miss Emily is back, my job is done. Please transfer the final payment to my account as soon as possible. With that, I went upstairs to pack my luggage without any hesitation. Don't go. Jake's voice came from behind me. I didn't stop. When I came downstairs with my suitcase, Jake's lips moved. He wanted to say something, but Marcus beat him to it. Bro, we all know about you finding a substitute. But now the real one's back. Seems like there's no place for her in our family. What should we do? Should we follow your so-called contract and let this Miss Emily leave? I smiled. Marcus. Don't make trouble. Take good care of Grandma and Dad from now on. I walked to Mr. Wilson and bowed slightly. Dad, remember to eat on time and stop staying up late. Don't go, Mrs. Wilson got anxious. She stood up to grab me, but swayed because she moved too quickly. I quickly stepped forward to support her. Grandma, don't get excited. I'll come back to visit you. At this moment, Jake blocked my way. Where are you going? Home. I smiled. My home. Sarah. He grabbed my wrist. Jake. Emily behind him let out a cry of pain, her body sliding down softly. I feel so dizzy. Jake's body stiffened. I could see the struggle in his eyes. In the end, he let go of me and turned to support the swaying Emily. But his eyes were fixed on me. I looked at him one last time. I wish you both a happy life together. The moment I walked out of the Wilson family's door, I took a deep breath of outside air. My name is Sarah. The Sarah who fought in underground boxing matches to raise money for her brother's surgery. My personality had nothing to do with Emily. I smoked, drank, raced motorcycles, cursed. Until my brother was diagnosed with a rare blood disease and needed a large sum of money for a bone marrow transplant. Just when I was about to despair, Jake found me. He showed me Emily's photo and asked if I was willing to make a deal. Play her for 2 years, $20 million. I looked at the woman in the photo, who looked 70% like me. I agreed. Jake gave me all of Emily's information. Her diary, her recordings. I want you to become her, inside and out. I locked myself in a room for a month without coming out. I imitated her handwriting, her voice, her habit of slightly frowning when reading. When I appeared again, Jake looked at me and was lost in thought for a long time. He knew I had succeeded. I married into the Wilson family as Sarah. But everyone knew I was Emily's substitute. At first, the Wilson family was hostile toward me. Mrs. Wilson disliked my unknown background. Mr. Wilson ignored me. Mrs. Wilson even threw things in front of me, calling me a fake. Didn't care. Hearts are made of flesh. Gradually, I became the backbone of the Wilson family, and Jake and our employer-employee relationship became somewhat subtle. The way he looked at me became more and more tender. But I stayed clear-headed. I was Sarah. With the money Jake gave me, I bought a more expensive motorcycle and an apartment near my brother's hospital to take care of him. With the rest of the money, I opened a small boxing club. This had always been my dream. I changed back into my leather jacket and pants, got on my beloved motorcycle, and roared through the city's night. Wind against the wind. I raced all the way to the bar where my best friend Lisa worked. Goodness gracious, Sarah. Did you just get out of prison? Lisa saw me and opened her mouth exaggeratedly. I took off my helmet and tossed her the keys. Give me the strongest drink you've got. Lisa skillfully mixed me a drink and pushed it in front of me. Talk. What happened? I downed half the glass in one gulp. It felt great. Went out for a job. I briefly explained what happened. Lisa listened indignantly and slapped the bar. These rich people are crazy. That Emily. Right? She doesn't come back early or late, but comes back now. I think she's just a manipulative woman. I don't know if she's manipulative or not. Swirled the ice in my glass. I only know I'm free now. I said I was free. But why did my heart feel so empty? On the opening day of the club, all my old friends came. The scene was lively. Sarah, you're finally back. We missed you so much. Yeah. You disappeared for 2 years. Like you'd evaporated. We thought you'd been kidnapped. I laughed and clinked glasses with them. While we were chatting happily, the club door was pushed open. Marcus's face appeared at the door. When he saw me, his eyes instantly turned red. Sister-in-law. He rushed over, almost knocking me off balance. How did you find this place? Sister-in-law? He grabbed my arm. Quick. Come back with me. Grandma is sick. The pounding bass of the club's speakers seemed to dull out as Marcus's voice cracked through the air. The smell of cheap beer, sweat, and leather that I'd missed for 2 years suddenly felt suffocating. What do you mean she's sick? I asked, setting my drink down so hard the glass nearly shattered. She was fine when I left. It hasn't even been 3 weeks. Marcus dragged a hand through his usually perfectly styled hair, making it stand up on end. He looked exhausted, the dark circles under his eyes a stark contrast to his usual playboy glow. She hasn't eaten properly since you left, Sarah, he panted, his chest heaving. She refuses to take her medication from anyone but you. And that woman. Emily? Marcus scoffed, a bitter, angry sound. Yeah. Emily. She tried to make Grandma's chamomile tea the way you do, but she used the wrong honey, and when Grandma told her it tasted wrong, Emily started crying and saying we were bullying her for being gone so long. Grandma got so stressed out her blood pressure spiked. She collapsed this afternoon. My heart gave a painful, involuntary squeeze. Mrs. Wilson was a tough, aristocratic woman who had initially looked at me like dirt on her shoe. But over the last 2 years, she had become the grandmother I never had. We had spent countless afternoons in the greenhouse, talking about everything from the Wilson family history to her secret love for trashy romance novels. Is she in the hospital? I asked, grabbing my leather jacket from the bar stool. No, the private doctor is at the house. But she keeps asking for you. She won't let Emily in the room. Marcus looked at my outfit, the black combat boots, the ripped jeans, the leather jacket. He blinked, as if he couldn't reconcile the woman standing in front of him with the pristine, white dress-wearing saint who had managed his household for 2 years. Are you going to come like that? If she wants Sarah, I said, zipping up my jacket, she gets Sarah. The real one. I tossed my keys to Lisa, who gave me a knowing, supportive nod, and followed Marcus out the door. The Wilson estate looked exactly the same as I had left it, but the atmosphere was entirely different. The usual quiet elegance was replaced by a frantic, heavy tension. When Marcus and I walked through the grand double doors, the first person I saw was Jake. He was pacing the foyer, rubbing his temples, looking like he hadn't slept in days. When he heard the door shut, he snapped his head up. His eyes widened as they took me in. The leather jacket. The heavy eyeliner. The lack of a gentle, demure smile. For a second, he looked completely lost, as if a stranger had just walked into his house wearing his wife's face. Sarah, he breathed, taking a step toward me. You came. Marcus said Mrs. Wilson was asking for me, I said, my voice flat, entirely devoid of the soft, breathy cadence I had used for 2 years. Where is she? Before Jake could answer, a voice drifted down from the top of the grand staircase. Jake? Who is it? Emily descended the stairs. She was wearing a pale pink cashmere cardigan over a white silk dress, an outfit I knew intimately, because it was an exact replica of what I had worn every Sunday for family brunch. She looked ethereal, fragile, and deeply annoyed. When she saw me, her steps faltered. She gripped the mahogany banister, her knuckles turning white. She looked at my clothes, my posture, and the sheer, unapologetic confidence radiating from me, and I saw a flicker of genuine insecurity cross her face. Why is she here? Emily asked, her voice trembling just enough to sound pathetic. Jake, you told me the contract was over. It is over, I answered before Jake could. I didn't use Emily's gentle tone. I used my own voice, lower, sharper, with the gravelly edge of a girl who had grown up fighting for every scrap she had. I'm not here for him. I'm here for Grandma. Emily flinched. She is my grandmother. I am her real granddaughter-in-law. You are just a hired fake. A hired fake who actually knows how to take care of her, Marcus shot back, stepping in front of me protectively. Unlike you, who just sits around crying every time someone asks you to do something. Marcus. Enough, Jake snapped, though his voice lacked its usual authority. He looked exhausted by the conflict. He turned back to me, his eyes pleading. Sarah, please. Grandma is in her bedroom. The doctor said her heart rate is dangerously high. Just calm her down. I didn't wait for permission. I bypassed Jake, ignored Emily's glare, and took the stairs two at a time. When I pushed open the heavy oak doors to Mrs. Wilson's bedroom, the smell of antiseptic and stale air hit me. The private doctor was packing up his bag, looking grim. Mr. Wilson was sitting in an armchair in the corner, holding his head in his hands. And in the massive canopy bed, looking smaller and frilier than I had ever seen her, was Mrs. Wilson. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of the door. When she saw me, a weak, genuine smile broke across her wrinkled face. "Sarah," she rasped, lifting a trembling hand. "You bad girl. You left without saying a proper goodbye." I felt a lump form in my throat. I walked over and took her hand, the expensive jade bracelets I had returned still sitting in their velvet box on her nightstand. "I'm sorry, Grandma," I said softly, but in my own voice. I didn't want to cause a scene. "Mr. Wilson looked up. He saw my leather jacket and the heavy eyeliner, but he didn't look shocked. He just looked profoundly relieved. "She wouldn't eat the soup the chef made," he muttered. "Said it tasted like dishwater." "Because it does, Arthur," Mrs. Wilson snapped weakly, her old fire returning for a brief second. She looked back at me, her sharp eyes taking in my real appearance. "So this is the real you. Hooligan clothes and all." I chuckled, a genuine, throaty sound. "Yeah. Disappointed?" "No," she said, her grip on my hand tightening surprisingly. "I always knew you were too good to be true, acting like that delicate little flower. But the heart was real, Sarah. I know a genuine heart when I see one. You didn't fake caring for an old woman. You didn't fake staying up with Arthur when his insomnia hit. That wasn't Emily's ghost. That was you." Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. For 2 years, I had convinced myself I was just doing a job. I was an actress playing a role for a paycheck to save my brother. But sitting here, holding this old woman's hand, I realized that while the mannerisms were fake, the love I had poured into this fractured family was entirely my own. "That girl downstairs," Mrs. Wilson whispered, her tone turning cold. "She may have Emily's face, and Emily's memories, but she does not have Emily's soul. Or at least, not the soul I remember." I frowned, leaning closer. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Wilson sighed, closing her eyes. "Before the accident, Emily was sweet, yes. But she was self-absorbed. Everything had to be about her and Jake. When she came back, I expected her to be traumatized, perhaps. But all she does is demand attention. She complains about the food, she complains about the temperature, she cries when she isn't the center of the room. It's exhausting." She opened her eyes and looked right at me. "I don't want a ghost, Sarah. I want my daughter-in-law back." "Grandma, I can't," I whispered, the reality of the situation crushing me. Jake loves her. She's his true love. He paid me $20 million just to pretend to be her for 2 years. Now that she's back, there is no place for me here. "Jake is a fool," Mr. Wilson suddenly spoke up from the corner, his voice heavy with paternal disappointment. "He spent 3 years mourning an idealized version of a woman that never really existed. And when he hired you, he fell in love with you, Sarah. He just doesn't realize it yet, because he's too stubborn to admit he moved on." I froze. He didn't fall in love with me. He fell in love with my performance. Did he? Mr. Wilson stood up, walking over to the bed. "Do you think Emily ever knew how to fix a leaky carburetor on his vintage Mustang? Because I saw you do it in the garage last summer when you thought no one was looking. Do you think Emily ever told Marcus to stop acting like a spoiled brat and get his life together? No, she coddled him. Jake fell in love with the strength underneath your performance, Sarah. And now that he has the fragile original back, he's suffocating." I didn't know what to say. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Stay for dinner," Mrs. Wilson commanded, her voice brooking no argument. "Make me that ridiculous spicy chicken soup you used to sneak me when the doctors weren't looking. And wear what you want. No more white dresses." I couldn't say no to her. I nodded, squeezing her hand. "Okay. Just for dinner." Walking into the Wilson family kitchen in combat boots felt like a fever dream. The head chef, a terrifyingly strict Frenchman named Henri, actually beamed when he saw me. "Madame Sarah," he practically shouted. "Thank God." "The new one," she asks for everything boiled. "No salt. It is a crime against gastronomy." "I got it, Henri," I laughed, tying an apron over my leather jacket. "Spicy chicken soup for Grandma. Heavy on the garlic." I fell into the rhythm of the kitchen effortlessly. Chopping, simmering, tasting. For an hour, I forgot about the contract, the millions, the boxing club, and the ghost upstairs. I was just cooking for my family. When I brought the tray into the formal dining room, the atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jake sat at the head of the table. Emily sat to his right, picking at a piece of boiled fish with a look of profound suffering. Marcus sat on the left, glaring at his phone. Mr. Wilson was at the opposite end, sipping wine in stony silence. I set the steaming bowl of soup down at the empty place setting reserved for Mrs. Wilson, who was being wheeled in by the butler. "Smells incredible, Sarah," Mr. Wilson said warmly. "Thank you, Dad," I replied automatically, before catching myself. I felt my cheeks heat up. "I mean, Mr. Wilson." Jake's head snapped up at the slip. He looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. He looked from my heavy boots, to my dark makeup, to the apron tied around my waist. Emily dropped her fork with a clatter. "Why is she cooking?" Emily demanded, her voice rising in pitch. "Jake, we have a chef. Why is your employee serving us dinner? It's highly inappropriate." "Sarah is not an employee," Marcus snapped, slamming his phone face down on the table. "She's family. I am his wife." Emily shrieked, tears instantly welling in her eyes. "I am the one who almost died. I was in a coma for 3 years. And I come back to find this biker trash trying to steal my life." The dining room went dead silent. I slowly untied the apron and laid it over the back of a chair. I didn't get angry. I didn't yell. I just looked at Emily with the cold, calculating gaze of a fighter sizing up an opponent in the ring. "I didn't steal your life, Emily," I said evenly. "Your husband bought my time. And while you were sleeping, I was the one keeping this family from falling apart. I was the one who held Mr. Wilson while he cried on the anniversary of his wife's death. I was the one who bailed Marcus out of jail and made him go to rehab. I was the one who sat by Grandma's bed for 5 days straight when she had pneumonia." I leaned forward, resting my knuckles on the mahogany table. "I didn't steal your life. I built one of my own. And from what I can see, you're doing a pretty terrible job of trying to fill the shoes I left behind." Emily gasped, pressing a hand to her chest as if she had been physically struck. She looked at Jake, expecting him to explode, expecting him to defend her honor and throw me out on the street. But Jake didn't move. He was staring at me. Not with anger, but with a profound, earth-shattering realization. "Jake!" Emily cried, tugging on his sleeve. "Say something. Defend me." Jake slowly turned his head to look at her. His eyes, usually so soft when they rested on her, were distant. "She's right," Jake whispered. Emily froze. "What?" "She's right," Jake repeated, his voice gaining strength. He looked around the table, at his father, his brother, his grandmother, and finally, at me. "When I thought you died, Emily, I broke. I hired Sarah because I wanted to freeze time. I wanted to live in a delusion where you were still here." He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. But I didn't fall in love with the delusion, Jake said, his voice breaking. I fell in love with the woman playing the part. I fell in love with the way she laughed when she thought no one was listening. I fell in love with the way she fought for Marcus when I had given up on him. I fell in love with her fire. He looked directly into my eyes, and for the first time in 2 years, I saw the absolute, terrifying truth in his gaze. I'm sorry, Emily, Jake said softly, the finality in his voice ringing like a death knell for their past. I grieved you for 3 years. But the man who loved you died in that car crash with you. The man standing here, he loves Sarah. Emily let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She pushed her chair back violently and ran out of the dining room, her footsteps echoing up the stairs until a door slammed shut. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at Jake, my heart hammering against my ribs. You paid me $20 million to be her. I paid you $20 million because I was a coward who couldn't face reality, Jake said, taking a step toward me. He reached out, his fingers lightly brushing the sleeve of my leather jacket. I don't want the white dresses anymore, Sarah. I don't want the gentle smiles. I want the girl who beats people up in a boxing ring to pay for her brother's surgery. I want the girl who rides a motorcycle. I want you. I took a step back, my mind spinning. Jake, you can't just do this. She is your legal wife. She came back from the dead for you. And I will make sure she is taken care of for the rest of her life, Jake said firmly. I will give her half of everything I own if I have to. But I will not spend the rest of my life pretending I'm not in love with you. Give him a chance, Sarah, Mrs. Wilson said softly from the head of the table, her bowl of spicy soup half empty. He's an idiot, but he's our idiot. I looked at Marcus, who was grinning like an idiot, and Mr. Wilson, who gave me a small, encouraging nod. I looked back at Jake. The handsome, broken, arrogant man who had bought my life only to accidentally hand me his heart. I run a boxing club now, I warned him, crossing my arms over my chest. I smell like sweat and leather 90% of the time. I curse when I'm angry. And I will never, ever wear a white dress again. Jake smiled, a genuine, breathtaking smile that reached his eyes. I'll buy a pair of gloves tomorrow, he said. And you can teach me how to throw a punch. The transition wasn't easy. The media had a field day when the news leaked that the miraculously resurrected Emily Wilson and the billionaire Jake Wilson were quietly filing for divorce. The tabloids spun wild stories, that Emily had faked her death, that Jake had lost his mind, that I was a gold-digging homewrecker who had manipulated my way into the family. We ignored all of it. Jake kept his promise. He settled with Emily generously, ensuring she would never have to work a day in her life. She moved to Paris a few months later, eager to escape the ghost of the life she couldn't reclaim, and the shadow of the woman who had lived it better. As for me, I didn't move back into the Wilson estate right away. I needed time to figure out who Sarah was without the $20 million contract hanging over my head. I ran my boxing club. I took care of my brother, whose bone marrow transplant was a complete success. I rode my motorcycle along the coast, feeling the wind in my hair, finally free from the suffocating perfection of Emily's ghost. But every evening, right around sunset, a sleek black Aston Martin would pull up to the gravel parking lot of my gritty, underground boxing gym. Jake would walk in, wearing tailored suit pants and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, looking entirely out of place among the heavy bags and the smell of cheap adrenaline. He would wrap his hands, step into the ring, and let me spar with him. I beat him black and blue for the first 2 months. I made him earn every inch of ground he had lost. I made him prove that he wasn't looking for a substitute, but a partner. And slowly, steadily, he did. One evening, a year after Emily had returned, we were lying on the canvas of the boxing ring, panting and covered in sweat. The gym was empty, the only sound the hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. Jake rolled onto his side, propping his head on his hand, looking down at me. I had a bruised cheekbone, my hair was a tangled mess, and my knuckles were bleeding. He reached out, his thumb gently swiping a drop of sweat from my jawline. "You look beautiful," he murmured. I snorted, turning my head to look at him. "I look like I just went 10 rounds with a freight train, Wilson." "Exactly," he smiled, leaning down to press a soft, lingering kiss to my bruised cheek. "Perfect." He pulled a small, worn velvet box from the pocket of his gym shorts. He didn't open it immediately. He just rested it on the canvas between us. "When Grandma passed away last month," Jake said quietly, the grief still raw in his voice, "she left something in her will specifically for you. She said I wasn't allowed to give it to you until I had proven I could take a punch." My breath hitched. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. Jake sat up with me. He opened the box. Inside weren't the jade bracelets. It was a ring. A massive, antique emerald-cut diamond set in platinum. It was heavy, formidable, and entirely unique. It wasn't delicate. It wasn't fragile. It was her mother's, Jake explained, his eyes locked on mine. "She said it requires a strong hand to carry it. A real hand." He took a deep breath, looking at me with a vulnerability that stripped away all the billions, all the contracts, and all the ghosts of the past. "Sarah. You saved my father. You saved my brother. You gave my grandmother peace in her final years. But most importantly, you woke me up. You dragged me out of a graveyard and forced me to live again." He picked the ring out of the box. "I don't want a contract," Jake whispered. "I don't want a time limit. I want the rest of our lives. Will you marry me? For real this time?" I looked at the ring. I looked at the man holding it, sweaty, bruised, and looking at me like I was the only fixed point in his entire universe. I didn't give him a gentle, demure smile. I didn't lower my eyes submissively. I threw my arms around his neck, tackling him back down onto the canvas with a laugh that echoed through the empty gym, raw, real, and entirely my own. "Yeah, Wilson," I whispered against his lips. "I'll marry you." And as he slipped the heavy, antique ring onto my calloused, bruised finger, I knew that the ghost of Emily Wilson was finally laid to rest. I wasn't a substitute anymore. I was the champion. And this time, the life I was living belonged entirely to me.